retrospect, I should have probably waited till the series was over to see how this aspect of it actually plays out, but I'm impatient as fuck, so...
This really did come back to bite me in the ass, didn't it? Well, I'm sure you've probably already seen the dozens of videos people have made on it. I figured I'd throw my hat into the ring here as well, because as my previous Darling in the FranXX video indicated, and to which this video is a sort of addendum to, which is probably best seen after watching that video to fully understand where I'm coming from with this one, I enjoyed Darling in the FranXX. For me, it was an entertaining series about growing up in an apathetic world and finding strength in your relationships with those around you that got me genuinely invested in its characters and world. It was, however, undeniably questionable, to put it lightly, in its portrayal of certain topics, and burdened by a feeling of trying to do too much, which is quite an odd thing to say for a 24-episode series. It wanted to be melodramatic and lighthearted, it wanted to be fast-paced and a slow burn, it wanted to be seen as mature and over-the-top, all at the same time. And in the end, that inability to balance its ideas is what I think eventually led to its downfall. Though the second core of the series started off pretty strong, it quickly took a turn so drastically out of left field it gave everyone whiplash. It went from being subtle with its world building and history to simply lecturing us about it. It introduced a slew of half-baked twists that clogged the show's runtime, and some of which, depending on your interpretation of the series, completely undermined what it was all about, while in the process flushing so many others down the drain in the middle of their arcs, such as most of the cast's character growth, Zero Two's nightmares, and this fucking thing, just to name a few, as if the show had completely forgotten they'd existed. And the ones it did develop felt inconsequential, given how easily they're dealt with and how quickly things return to normal once they are. Of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with anything it introduced, technically, and there are some aspects of it I did enjoy, but overall the show simply didn't integrate them in a way that felt justified. In a bid to include as many of its ideas as it could last minute, the show rushed toward an ending that was simply unsatisfying. And it's especially disappointing to watch because I think it had quite a few options for a stronger conclusion if it had just been willing to cull a few things. Of course, an obvious fix would be to give the show more time, perhaps with a second season, to develop the ideas it had crammed into the last act. And while I do think that'd be the best option all around, giving the show the chance to actually make all its crazy ideas work, and give its characters actual growth, and maybe give some of them better endings, just saying. There'd be no guarantee of the show getting that opportunity, and putting all its bets on delivering a satisfying ending in Season 2 could leave the show to end on a cliffhanger that might never get a resolution. The show would have to make the ending of this season work. But you could achieve the same thing by removing the filler episodes. It would free up a significant amount of runtime for the show to properly foreshadow and build toward its ending without feeling rushed. But at the same time, those episodes do serve to flesh out its characters and their personalities, endearing and connecting us to them, as well as providing moments of respite before diving back into the action and tension of the main storyline. By cutting the filler and focusing on plot, you'd risk losing the connections people had built with the characters that made the show so beloved in the first place. Another option would be to simply remove Verm. Now, I do understand the general point of Verm, as their introduction is supposed to be a revelation for the characters that their world is far more complicated than they realized, heavily leaning into that theme of growing up that is so pervasive throughout the series, from awkward teens figuring out how sex and relationships work, to eventually learning to live on their own. But not only is it introduced in the most jarring way possible, it also to an extent feels unnecessary. The main cast had already been learning that the adult world they'd revered is riddled with problems, ones that the show had made especially clear in episodes 16 through 18. Removing Verm would allow the show to refocus its attention on that flawed society, as well as making sure each member of the main cast get a fully realized character arc, something which was sorely lacking in the original ending. It could have also emphasized that aforementioned theme of growing up, by having Strelitzia Apis perhaps blasting Ape's flying fortress out of the sky, destroying them and leaving humanity without guidance. It would force the characters to look after themselves and their fellow parasites, as well as rebuilding society all on their own, just as kids learn to eventually step out of their parents' shadows and lead their own lives. Taking Verm out of the equation would let the show develop on the characters and themes it had already established and built on, and deliver a far stronger ending. Or maybe it could have had the kids become Klaxosaurs to fight back against Papa and his authoritarian regime in a large-scale rebellion that... You know, I could sit here all day and ramble on about what Darling in the FranXX's ending could have been, but it doesn't change what its ending actually is. Disappointing. there was so much potential here to do something great that, in my view, was wasted for the sake of doing as much as possible, and it's a real shame. I originally wanted to make this video a light-hearted take on this whole debacle, but eventually I realized that tone just felt insincere. So I dropped it and went with this more rambly approach to get across how I feel. And if anything, I think that's the lesson to take away from all this. Sometimes you have to leave a lot of ideas and concepts and characters, even the ones you love most, on the cutting room floor, because they just don't work as well as you want them to. It's difficult, but it's necessary to make your story as good as it possibly can. So be frank, and kill your darlings. And yeah, those are my thoughts. Bit of a downer video, but what are you gonna do? If you want a more positive take on the show, I'd recommend Isla Matier's open letter to Darling in the Franxx and its director, which kind of summarizes a lot of my own thoughts on it better than I think I could. And it's also just a great video, so check it out if you have the time. Anyway, let me know what you think. If you agree, disagree, how you felt about the ending of Darling in the Franxx, if you'd watch a spin-off series about Goro exploring the post-apocalyptic landscape of Darling in the Franxx's world, etc. And thanks for watching. Check out my last video where I explain why Megalobox is so fun to watch. Or check out my video on My Hero Academia and how its use of horrific injury strengthens its story. And if you've enjoyed this and want to see more, don't forget to like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to come fly with me. You can also follow me on Twitter for more updates about this channel and other stuff, and hopefully, I'll see you later.